go.
You good, brother, man. No, this is good, man. I got
Let's go, man.
podcast. We back again. Technology has its limitations, despite what people think. But we back again because my brother messed with the man last time, so he came back and blessed me again. I got my brother Kwame Mensah. He has the just the identity talk consultant LLC. As you can see, he's coming with all the advice. Whenever I'm in a room with you, man, I always try to make sure I just make sure you shine, man. Try to make sure people know this is the man you need to talk to when you're trying to get the cultural responsive teaching, when you're just trying to get the social emotional learning, when you're trying to get just basic advice. He has years of public school experience. He's the author of the 8 lessons that define a teacher. How you doing, brother man, in Ethiopia?
Yeah, man. I appreciate it, Calvin. Great to run this back again. And just a slight correction: it's 14 years. I've
Oh.
been in this game for a long time. I know the face doesn't show it yet, but trust me, brother. I got my scars, man. I got my
Respect,
scars, brother.
respect,
But
respect.
no, it's all love.
Respect, respect. Yeah, man. So, the teach tip of the week, we like to start off with the T Simple podcast with a tip. Man, you're an educational consultant, man. So I'm just go ahead and give you my minutes. I'm gonna yield my minutes to you, man. I want you to go ahead. What's the teacher tip of the week would you give to teachers right now that maybe experience, what happened at the Capitol, right? And they had to literally go to work next day and choose, right? They had to choose between to either be themselves or be a teacher, if you know what that means.
No,
So,
no.
yeah, go ahead.
I got you, man. I would say, well, for number one, the motto that I go by, the mantra that Identity Talk Consulting goes by is stay true to the teacher and you. And as you can see on the hoodie right here, that's what we do. Um, so quick plug in there. So if you want the hoodie, quick plug. Got the Identity Talk Apparel shop that's up, and we'll talk about that. But getting back to your question, when you think about what happened at the Capitol, obviously it was devastating. And what I appreciate, even though it took too long for it to happen, is you have media people calling it what it is. And it was a terrorist attack, a white terrorist attack. And for the past 4 years, we've been talking about just how white supremacy has been on the rise to the point where we have all this chaos in our nation's capital and in other communities that have been ravaged. So when I heard that it happened, I naturally went on, my social media, got on my Instagram, got on my Twitter, and I just spoke my piece because the thing that I kept thinking about was the importance of centering trauma informed and restorative practices in our schools. And when you think about the current and soon to be gone administration, they weren't for restorative practices. They weren't for it. You know, they thought that it would give students license to just act all wild because we're being it's quote unquote soft, right? But when you think about traumatic events like what happened at the nation's capital, how can you not center those type of practices? I mean, students, especially Black students, go through trauma the minute they're born. We are born into trauma based on just our history alone. So when you layer it with the different events that continue to happen, the perpetual loss of Black life, the racism, and of course, we talk about intersectionality. You have to throw in sexism. So thinking about Black women who are discriminated, whether it's on their jobs, whether it's in other realms in our society, and just the constant explaining and processing of why it continues to happen. Uh, this is what kids go through. And as if I was still in the classroom, I wouldn't teach a single minute of instruction unless it was tied to what happened on that day.
Mm.
But even before getting to instruction, if Eddie, we gotta check to see if people are okay. And that should be a daily routine for every teacher. Just check to see if your kids are okay. If you're a principal, check to see if your teachers are okay. You know, and if you're a teacher, check to see if your principal's okay, because the reality is not all principals are alike. There are some great principals out there who unfortunately get a bad rap because there are other principals that overshadow the work that they're trying to do in their own school communities. So I would just say everybody needs to get a check-in. Everybody who
Yeah.
is involved in this educator process, even our parents
Yeah.
and stakeholders in our community, we just need a check-in.
Yeah.
At this point, academics is not the priority right now. How can you think about academics when these type of things are happening?
Say it again, man.
How? So that's my tip. Check in with everybody, even your strong people.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Absolutely, bro. That was great. Yeah, man. I purposely didn't do that. Like I didn't teach. And I did something a little bit more provocative. So usually we did the journal on it, right? So I just had them write about it. And I didn't really address it because I had some other stuff I needed to get to, but I just wanted to at least address it somehow. But like
Mhm.
intentionally address it, I didn't. But in my 6 hour class, I did. And I showed them the video of the cops opening the gates.
Wow.
And guess what their reaction was? They were shocked. It's like their spirits were just portrayed. They were so shocked. And I think in that moment, they were like, dang, it's like that. And one kid was like, if there was black. And then you already know what the kid said, you know?
All
And
right.
and that was my best class this entire year. That was my best class this entire year. And I keep telling this story on this podcast because like the leadership that I gained, the student voice I gained from that conversation,
Mm.
just the community I gained. Because I started like preaching because I was like, these are people that don't want to grow. These are people that are scared. These are people that don't want to step out of their comfort zone. These are people that you know what I'm saying, that are literally fighting against their own interests just because
Absolutely.
people of color want equal rights. This should make you mad.
No, you're right.
This should piss you off.
Yep.
And I was like, whenever you feeling discouraged, never forget how you felt when you saw those cops pull those cages.
Come on, man. Talk about it. Come on. And it's so funny you mentioned that. And it's actually another lesson that you just said there, because I know for you, you're a science teacher. I was a math teacher teaching middle school, grade 6 through 8. And yes, our primary job description is to teach math.
Mm-hmm.
So in Massachusetts, we do an iteration of Common Core, even though they don't want to call it that, but it's Common Core. I don't know what it is out in Michigan,
Okay.
what you all teach out there, but here's what is Common Core still? Yeah, but here's what I would say. That's our job description, but that doesn't mean that we're limited to that. Especially as Black male educators, we understand that our responsibility is so much greater and transcends whatever the job description states,
Mm.
which is why we have an invisible tax.
Mm.
That's why there's an invisible tax with Black educators, especially Black male educators, because we're looked upon to do more than just teach. We're looked upon to be the ones to quote unquote police all the Black boys and all the Black girls, because we're those that can connect with them. No one else around them can. None of the white teachers can. None of the other folks can. So it's like, nah, Kwame, go ahead and talk to so and so. I can't get to him. he is messing up in my class. But he'll listen to you though.
Can't stand
You
it.
know, so but but I digress. The whole point is this. There are times where we have to go off script.
Mm,
Drop the scope of the sequences for a day. Forget about the timeline. Forget about the interim assessments because honestly, if you lose a day of instruction, yeah, are you got to make it up at some point? Sure, you have to. But the reality is this: those those timelines, those arbitrary timelines and deadlines that are placed on us, they're not created by actual teachers.
mm,
Like a lot of people in the district, some of them have never been in the classroom. So they're not accounting for the IEP students. They're not accounting for the 504 students. They're not accounting for the non-IEP and non-504 students who need IEPs and 504s, right? They're not accounting for them when they make these deadlines. So obviously, your pacing is going to be impacted because of the people inside your class.
yeah.
And so if they can't teach, if they're not able to mentally function because of the traumatic events that happened the day before, you have to call an audible
Mm,
and just say, yo, all right, we're not going to teach today. Let's just talk. And I'm telling you, the best classes happen when you go off script. I've had the best classes happen, and none of them had to do with math. None of them. And then I can remember I was talking about one day a lot of things. I was talking about a little bit of Black history, but I was also talking about just income inequality because in Boston, Black folks, they don't own homes.
really?
Most of the Black folks rent homes, right?
Yeah.
And when you think about education, you don't have too many Black and brown people who are born and raised in Boston who end up going to college to get degrees and ultimately, get lucrative careers. So there's gaps there. There's a social economical gap there, and then there are a whole lot of things happening. So I was trying to break that down to my students in the 90 minutes that we had, even though I was supposed to be teaching about fractions that day. I just went into a story as I always do.
Yeah.
And usually after 5 minutes, I get right back into the main lesson. But for some reason, 5 minutes turned into 10 minutes. 10 minutes turned into 20 minutes because as I was sharing, we went deeper and deeper and deeper into the roots of the issues to the point where I was telling them about the importance of owning a home versus renting a home. I was talking about why do you think you have people knock on your door asking you if you want to sell your home? And it's usually white folks.
Right.
So that's where we start to talk about the symptoms and the signs of gentrification,
Right.
right? So just talking about real stuff like that they see on a daily basis, but for whatever reason they're not able to connect the dots and understand why it's important for them to advocate and to fight against those things. So this is what I'm telling my 7th and 8th graders. Yeah, so I'm with you with going off script. I'm with you with that.
So as like a consultant, are you taught that, or it's just like a feeling that you just know, like you have to do that? So like, give you another example, like when Trump got elected, right? The day after
Mm-hmm.
that, I don't know if you remember that. I don't know if he was in school or teaching.
I remember that vividly.
So
Sadly.
I showed them. So I scrapped everything, called the audible. You
Yep.
go over there, go over there, right?
Yes.
And I whipped it out the Ava DuVernay 13,
Woo.
right? And I did exactly what you said. Like I would play it and then I'll pause it and I'll start talking and I'm writing on the board and they're all glued to it. And I started with like, man, this stuff has been happening forever and this is how it's been. And then I'm breaking down like the Republican Party, difference between being a conservative Republican versus being a conservative Democrat, right? Bill Clinton was very he was probably moderate, but he was very like establishment. He believed in the prison and the crime bill, and and then Reagan and Nixon, they all laid the pathway for this crime slave synonym thing that they used to oppress black men, and they were just super glued to it, bro. So as the consultant, like, were you taught that, like, or I guess like, yeah, how do you consult that? I mean, you already been consulting that.
Well, here's
how
the
do we
thing.
get into the book? How do we teach it at university? That's what I meant to say.
Yeah. So a couple things. I think number one, first and foremost, I'm an educator.
Right.
So not every educational consultant has had experience teaching in the classroom. So I think it's important for the audience to hear and to get some clarification on. So I'm a teacher first. So whenever I do my consultancy work, I lead with my teacher hat, if that makes sense. So whenever I'm making decisions, whenever I'm crafting different presentations and workshops for K-12 school leaders and educators, I'm always thinking about the different perspectives that are coming into play here. The administrative perspective, the classroom teacher perspective, the paraprofessional perspective, the teacher assistant perspective, all the different roles that are within your standard school setting. And with consulting, the thing with consulting is you're not always going to do what you want to do. The whole idea of consulting is to provide counsel and advice in order to help the school district or the school or a cohort of teachers solve a problem that they're having. That's the role of the consultant, is to help, because the district's going to come to you and say, hey, this is the problem that we have. Can you help us fix it? Do you have any resources that you can give us to help us fix it? Or can you provide a workshop?
Right.
What can you do for us? And then that's when I, the consultant, provide the options for services. So maybe it's a one-day workshop. Maybe it's a book club. Maybe it's follow-up sessions with a cohort of teachers who need extra support. Maybe it's me coming into the school 3-4 times a month just to monitor classroom instruction and other things that are happening within the school's operation. So whatever the needs are, it's up to me, the consultant, to craft a plan that shapes what it is that particular school or educator needs, right?
Yeah.
But also, we have to be very selective in who we work with, because there are some folks who may hire you or want you to work with them, but they don't believe in the mission.
Right. Yeah, man.
If they don't believe in the mission, what you're trying to do, you cannot work with them, because here's why. Whenever I come in to any school, I'm coming in as a They Ain't Talk consulting. I'm not coming in just as Kwame Sarfo Mensah. I'm coming in as a They Ain't Talk consulting. I'm coming in as stay true to the teacher in you. So my reputation precedes me wherever I go. It follows me. So if I'm associated with schools or individuals who don't rock with the mission, that hurts my brand. So for anybody who's going into entrepreneurship, or if you're thinking about starting your own business, think about the kind of individuals you want to work with. What's your target audience going to be?
Target audience.
Who do you want to support? Who do you want to help? and what problem do you want to solve that's impacting the people you're targeting? Because in the end, yes, when you're in business, especially as a for-profit company like we are, you do need revenue in order for the company to keep going.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's about your values. It's about your values.
And that also brings confidence though, because like you have to have confidence in your value, and people have to have confidence in your value. And
Oh,
that's
no
one thing
doubt.
that I struggle as a leader is when I give advice, I'm not confident sometimes that my consultation is going to work, and I'm very, very like nervous. So like, how long did it take for you to have the confidence enough to be like, what I say is good enough for you to pay me? You know what I'm saying? Like, like how did you? So for example, a master teacher told me that you don't become a master teacher until your 8th year or like your 7th year in teaching. Like it takes time. And if it really takes you time, it might take you 10 years, to really get there. And how many years again you've been teaching at Boston? How many years was that again?
So, so I've taught in Boston and Philadelphia altogether. I taught 9 years,
Okay.
9 years total, but been in the game 15 overall
Bet.
in other capacities, but 9 years as a lead like classroom teacher.
Right.
So so to answer your question,
Mm-hmm.
where does my confidence come from?
Yeah. Confidence.
My confidence comes from the receipts.
Okay.
Check my receipts. Ask my students. Talk to my former students. They will tell you how great of a teacher Mr. Sarfo Mensah was to them. Though I look at the receipts. It's all about receipts.
Sheets.
That's how I know that the work that I'm doing is impactful. When random people hit me up on social media and say, man, I loved your book. Man, I watched your podcast and it helped me solve this problem.
Yeah.
When people like the receipts is what gives you credibility. That's why when you go to people's websites, they have testimonials
Right.
because people need to know that you're a legitimate person. People need to know that you are the right person for whatever job you need them to do. And they can't make that definitive decision if they don't have any kind of receipts that you have. So you, so I don't know how many years have you been doing this?
Teaching or the podcast?
How many years? Yeah, teaching. Teaching.
Teaching for 6 years.
All right, so you're at that stage now where you start to connect. You've already connected some dots.
Say that one more time.
So you're at that stage where you're starting to connect the dots a little bit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you're starting to. You have a sense of who you are now.
Yes.
You're not questioning that anymore, but there's still room for growth, as it is for any educator. I don't care how many years you do it. You never quite get to the mountaintop.
Mm.
There is always something you can refine, as COVID has taught us the past year or so. You have 30-year teachers who think they're their first year teacher now. Because, I never thought that I would have to be doing remote learning through a computer screen, but now I'm going to have to for the first time in 25 or 26, 27 years. I got to do it. I got to make the adjustment.
That
I'm
sounds
back to
great.
square one. So, yeah, but yeah, it's all about the years. I think the more years you do it, and the more you see the results, the more you see the impact that you're making, and the more that people tell you the impact that you're making, the more confidence that you have in yourself. Because I wasn't always this confident person.
Really?
Matter of fact, it's a miracle that I'm actually talking on a podcast with you, because when I started, and I told you this off air, I started my first 4 years of schooling as a special ed student.
Right. Right.
And the diagnosis was around expressive speech. I was a person who you would talk to, and my default would be to draw pictures because even though I had the thoughts in my head, it was too much work to communicate it in a way that was coherent for people to understand me. So as a default, I drew pictures to show you what I was trying to communicate. So I'm not even supposed to be talking to you right now based on his diagnosis, but here I am today.
Yeah, man.
And that's because it took work.
Yeah.
It took commitment.
Yeah.
But it also took a circle of individuals who saw who they see today, and they're able to build that self-efficacy into my being. And this is a perfect segue into social emotional learning.
Okay.
Because the whole essence of social emotional learning is to help students build self-efficacy. If you don't provide a space in your classroom, and I put this on my Twitter, but if you don't provide a space that allows your students to be great and to feel great, you don't deserve that hashtag. Take that hashtag off your profile. If you're not even centering your students in a way that gives them space to feel good about who they are and to embrace who they are. And there are too many people who are appropriating these hashtags in order for a way to fulfill their capitalistic dreams. And that's some real talk, man. And that's probably for another show. But I digress.
You know, but yeah, it's about integrity. You know, it's about taking your L's face forward. Like if you fail at something, don't run away from it. Take the L. I was telling you about the math test. Like every time I failed that math test, I literally focused on everything that I struggled with on that math test. I failed. As soon as I got home, I got on a computer and I just copied everything that I remember. I just searched it, put it on a document, failed again, did the same thing, but I did it more, right? And I'm pissed. You know what I'm saying? Because like I thought I should have got it. I didn't get it the first time, I got it the second time. Third time, I still failed, bro. I'm thinking about giving up because it's like,
wow.
You know, like
wow.
what's the point, you know? But
my goodness.
The support system, like you said, provide the space for you to vent so you can get it out, so you can get back to work, you know? And I just got back to work, man. And I knew the morning I woke up, it was going to be different, and I passed it, you know? But I never ran away from the L. You know what I'm saying? I never ran away from it. I always faced it.
Come on, man. Come on, bro. Come on, bro.
You know?
Listen.
That's what you're saying. It's like teaching is something that you can't run away from. Either you're going to go forth with it and be, like you said, provide a space for those kids, or you're not going to do it. And if you're not going to do it, you already contributing to the problem.
Yeah, and listen, man, and I know we're kind of going over the place, but you just said something I have to address. You said something as you were telling your story, and I don't know if you caught this. So self-efficacy is important, right? Not just for our students, but for our adults. Right. We need that. Yeah. We need the social emotional learning too. It's not just for the kids, for us as well. Yeah. And let's talk about standardized tests for a second.
Please.
You just described how demoralizing it was for you to fail that math test and how it made you feel. How about those kids that take those tests every single year? How do you think they feel? And they have to take the test. They're mandated to take the test. And just like with us as teachers,